The Siege of Acre, the bloodiest battle of the Crusades. Imagine being trapped inside a city for 2 years, disease running rampant, starvation creeping in, and the constant sound of war drums echoing through the air. Outside the walls, tens of thousands of Crusaders are determined to crush you. Inside, the defenders are just as determined to survive. This is the Siege of Acre, one of the longest, bloodiest, and most pivotal battles of the entire Crusades. And trust me, history has never been more brutal. But was this just another clash between Christians and Muslims? Or was there something much deeper at play? Today, we unravel the truth behind one of the most intense sieges in medieval history, where betrayal, diplomacy, and sheer brutality collided on the shores of the Holy Land. Hi, friends. Welcome to our channel, where we dive deep into history's most gripping events. If you love dramatic stories of war, strategy, and power struggles, then hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. And if you're already part of this journey, drop a comment below. Who do you think suffered the most in the Siege of Acre? The Crusaders outside the walls? Or the defenders trapped inside? Now let's go back over 800 years and step onto the blood-soaked battleground of Acre. The year is 1189 and the Holy Land is in chaos. Just 2 years earlier, the legendary Muslim commander Saladin achieved the impossible. He crushed the Crusader armies at the Battle of Hattin and captured Jerusalem. The loss of the Holy City sent shockwaves across Europe, and in response, the greatest leaders of Christendom launched the Third Crusade. But before they could even dream of taking back Jerusalem, they had to first reclaim one of the most important strongholds in the region, Acre. Why Acre? This was no ordinary city. Situated on the Mediterranean coast, Acre was a strategic gold mine. It was a crucial port, allowing supplies and reinforcements to flow into the Holy Land. Without it, Christian forces would have no base to launch further attacks. For Saladin, losing Acre would mean losing control over the entire region. And so, in August 1189, a massive Christian army, led by Guy of Lusignan, the recently freed king of Jerusalem, arrived at Acre's walls, determined to take it back. But they had no idea what they were in for. The siege begins. A battle of attrition. What was supposed to be a quick victory turned into a 2-year nightmare. The Crusaders set up camp outside the city, cutting it off from land-based supplies. But Saladin was no fool. He surrounded the Crusader camp, effectively trapping them between the city walls and his own army. This turned Acre into a death trap for both sides. For months, the battlefield was a living hell. Disease spread like wildfire. Soldiers starved. Water became scarce. Thousands died, not from combat, but from the sheer brutality of siege warfare. But the Crusaders weren't fighting alone. Some of the most powerful forces in medieval Europe weren't kings or knights, but merchant republics. The Italians, particularly the fleets of Genoa, Pisa, and Venice, played a massive role in the siege. These maritime powers supplied the Crusaders with ships, reinforcements, and, most importantly, siege equipment. Genoese engineers built massive trebuchets and siege towers, while Venetian ships blockaded Acre's harbor, cutting off supplies. In return, they weren't just fighting for faith, they were fighting for profit. Control over Acre meant control over trade routes, and for these merchant republics, the war was as much about wealth as it was about religion. The Crusades weren't just a clash of civilizations, they were a business opportunity. And that's a part of the story we rarely talk about. But while the warriors fought, it was disease and starvation that became the true killers. Siege warfare wasn't just about battles, it was about survival. Imagine this: tens of thousands of soldiers crammed together in filthy, unsanitary conditions. Food supplies dwindled. Horses were slaughtered for meat. Some reports even suggest cannibalism, desperate men resorting to eating the dead just to stay alive. And then came the plagues. Typhus, dysentery, and other diseases ripped through the camps, killing thousands. The stench of rotting corpses filled the air, and with no way to dispose of the dead properly, bodies were thrown into mass graves or left to rot in the streets. The suffering was unimaginable, but still, they fought on. But neither side gave up. Christian knights launched relentless assaults on the city's walls, using siege towers and battering rams. Muslim defenders rained down arrows, fire, and boiling oil. The corpses piled up, but the battle raged on. And then something unexpected happened. A new player enters, the arrival of Richard the Lionheart. By 1191, 2 of the most powerful rulers in Europe had arrived, King Richard the Lionheart of England and Philip II of France. Their arrival changed everything. Richard, a warrior king with a ruthless reputation, immediately took charge. But not all the battles were fought on the battlefield. Behind the scenes, the Crusader leaders were constantly betraying each other. Richard the Lionheart and Philip II of France arrived as allies, but their partnership quickly crumbled. Philip resented Richard's leadership and left the Holy Land early, abandoning the Crusade and returning to France. Some even suspected Philip planned to invade England while Richard was away. Meanwhile, the Crusaders themselves were divided. The Templars, the Hospitallers, and the various European nobles all had their own rivalries and agendas. Some knights even switched sides, betraying their fellow Christians for gold or political gain. The Siege of Acre wasn't just a war against Saladin, it was a war among the Crusaders themselves. And that internal conflict would shape the fate of the entire crusade. His military genius turned the tide of the battle. His men constructed advanced siege weapons, including massive trebuchets that rained destruction on Acre's walls. The pressure was unbearable. By July 1191, after 2 grueling years, Acre finally fell. But battles weren't won by swords alone. The Siege of Acre saw some of the most brutal psychological warfare and espionage tactics of the medieval era. Spies operated on both sides, sneaking in and out of enemy camps. Some Christian knights were bribed into passing information to Saladin. Meanwhile, Muslim informants disguised themselves as Crusaders, spreading misinformation and sabotage within enemy ranks. The Crusaders also used fear as a weapon. Captured Muslim prisoners were sometimes mutilated and sent back to the city as a warning. In response, Acre's defenders hung the severed heads of Christian knights from the walls. This wasn't just a military siege. It was a mental battle of endurance, deception, and terror. And for many, it was the mind games, not the swords, that broke them first. But the bloodshed didn't stop there. The aftermath: mass executions and unforgiving vengeance. After the city surrendered, the Crusaders demanded a massive ransom for the captured Muslim defenders. But when negotiations stalled, Richard the Lionheart made a decision that would send shockwaves through history. He ordered the execution of nearly 3,000 Muslim prisoners, including women and children. The killings were carried out in full view of Saladin's army. It was not just an act of vengeance, it was a statement. In response, Saladin retaliated by executing Christian prisoners. The Siege of Acre had ended, but the brutality of the Third Crusade was far from over. So what did the Siege of Acre really change? For the Crusaders, it was a crucial victory, but it came at a staggering cost. Tens of thousands had perished. The war continued. And despite all the blood spilled, Jerusalem would remain in Muslim hands. For Saladin, Acre's loss was a major blow, but he remained undefeated. His legendary battle against Richard the Lionheart would soon become one of history's greatest rivalries. But the Siege of Acre wasn't just about land or religion. It was a brutal reminder of how far both sides were willing to go in the name of power, faith, and revenge. Was this a fight for righteousness? Or just another example of war's endless cycle of cruelty? What do you think? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of history's most intense battles, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. And if you want more epic war stories from the past, check out this other videos on our channel. Thanks for watching, and remember, history is written in blood.